Welcome to today's Mentors Work webinar, Grow Your Own. This webinar will look at the benefits of growing your own workforce and will teach you about some of the supports that are out there to make this possible. My name is Elizabeth Bowen and I'm the Acting Director of the Small Firms Association. I hope you can hear me. Today we are joined by Michael McGrath, Director of AMTCE, Barry Kennedy, CEO of IMR, and Valerie O'Keefe, a trainer for the Mentors Work programme under our People heading. Valerie delivers training once a week to our Mentors Works applicants. Luke Malloy is today's webinar technician. While we're waiting for others to join, I will just let you know that this webinar will last about an hour. We've muted all of your phones to ensure no noise interference. We will circulate the slide deck and the recording after the webinar. At the end, you will receive a short survey to complete, as we love to hear your feedback and we'd like to make improvements. If you have any questions for any of the panel or myself during it, just pop them into the chat and we will have a short Q&A at the end. I will now hand you over to Michael McGrath and Barry Kennedy.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael McGrath and I am the Technical Director of the Advanced Manufacturing Training Centre of Excellence based in Dundalk. We were established in January of last year, and our stated goal is to improve and grow the technology IQ of the Irish manufacturing workforce in order to improve productivity and to drive business innovation. And why is that necessary? Well, manufacturing, which is a key foundational element of the Irish economy, is undergoing a significant transition with the advent of Industry 4.0. What that will mean is that there will be a transition in the types of jobs that are available within the manufacturing sector, where many jobs will go away. However, equivalent numbers, or if not larger numbers of new jobs will be created. This will require us to upskill our existing workforce to take on these new roles which will emerge over the coming years and decades ahead. And then secondly is about reskilling individuals as well to make sure that they are capable of operating now in an Industry 4.0 manufacturing oriented environment. As a sector, manufacturing will also undergo, I suppose, a disproportionately greater magnitude of change with respect to the deployment of automation, which will replace a lot of predictable and repetitive type operational tasks with technologies to replace those specific roles. However, this does not necessarily mean a reduction in overall headcount. It actually means really about pushing people up the value chain and to increase their skills in order to be able to work within an Industry 4.0 manufacturing environment. So, as I mentioned, upskilling and reskilling will become a critical part of delivering on Industry 4.0 for the Irish manufacturing sector. And there are a number of key, I suppose, advantages around the approach of upskilling and reskilling, I suppose, in contrast to actually buying in these skills from the market into your business environment. First of all, it's faster and may be more cost effective. Secondly, it is probably an option, particularly for high value skills. So for example, if you want to bring machine learning or AI or data analytics into your business, these are expensive skills to go out and bring in from the market. So it may, from a cost point of view, make an awful lot more sense to actually grow that capability from your existing employee base. It also, by going down the upskilling, reskilling route, it lowers risks because you get line of sight already to, the capabilities of the individuals and also their cultural fit within the organization and so forth. Also with new hires, when you bring them in, there's a ramp phase and obviously an associated loss in productivity until those new employees become familiar with the business. Also, there's also, when you upskill your existing employee base, they bring the business context, they understand the business, and then they can relate that training to the application within the business. We all know that upskilling plays a key part in employee satisfaction, can act as a competitive advantage to attract talent, and again, it's also more cost effective from the point of view is that there are there are significant government and state benefits available to you. So, for example, SkillNet, Skills to Advance would provide highly funded training to your organizations. You know, anything from 70 up to 100% funding for upskilling and reskilling. And then finally, no matter the types of technologies we deploy, whether it be AI, machine learning, robotics, whatever it is, ultimately there's still a human in the loop, and that human needs to be appropriately skilled in order to appropriately utilize those technologies within your business. The AMTCE was, as I say, was set up in January of last year. We have a very strong industry focused and really are directed by industry. We have an industry-led board. All of the staff within the AMTCE come from an industry background, so we're not from an educational background. We have no in-house trainers, so we actually buy in all of the training that we supply to industry from industry-leading practitioners. This allows us to be more flexible and agile, and also to regularly update our courses in response to evolving technologies and also the evolving needs of industry. We focus on providing upskilling, reskilling opportunities. We also deliver customized courses for SMEs. We also provide traineeships and apprenticeships and long-term skills in specific technology areas such as welding and robotic welding. And we also have a schools program in the area of advanced manufacturing in order to generate a new talent pipeline for the sector into future years. Our course offering is quite wide and diverse. We probably have about 150 different courses on the books at the moment. We have a course offering, I suppose, for all the key manufacturing verticals, so engineering, medtech, food and drink, and so forth. Most of our courses are short duration, 1 to 5 days, and as I said, already said, it is supported through state funding. So again, minimum or no cost access to the training opportunities for businesses. So the AMTCE is here to empower your businesses for success. If you want to find out more about the AMTCE, our course offerings and so forth, just check out our website or give us a call. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Barry Kennedy from Irish Manufacturing Research. Mike, on to the next slide there, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. IMR is a not-for-profit manufacturing research organisation, and we were founded by industry for industry about 8 years ago, and we've got 56 companies doing what we call Tier 1 research with us, 78 companies in total doing Tier 1 and Tier 2 research with us, and over 200 companies involved. And we were set up by the Irish state to essentially help demystify, de-risk, and deliver emerging technologies for industry. And when we gathered industry together, we asked them what was it that they would like us to do. And unfortunately, there's something wrong with the slide here. It's not coming up with the writing. But anyway, what it should say is that our job was to, no, sorry, Mike, if you go back a slide, please. Anyway, what it should have said was that the industry came to us and asked us to help them understand what the factory of the future looks like, to help them figure that out, to help them figure out what the employee of the future looks like and the skill sets that they need, and to help them to do it in a sustainable way. And that's what that particular diagram or image was supposed to show. And we've got 4 areas that we do research on. It's in the area of industrial IoT or digital technologies. That's about sensorizing systems and machines and gathering the data from those machines so you can make good informed business decisions. The next area is design for manufacturing, which is looking at the area of things like industrial 3D printing and these new technologies that are transforming the way we make things. The other area we have is advanced automation and robotics. In particular, we have a focus in the area of collaborative robots. So how can you get a robot to work side by side a human being, and what can you do with that? And finally, we look at sustainable manufacturing. And what we do, and the big challenge for companies is, as you're trying to grapple with this avalanche or tsunami of new technology coming at you, and as Michael mentioned earlier, knowing that in Asia and China in particular, Korea, They are absolutely the leaders in the world at the moment in transforming and going on this digital journey. When you're hit with this tsunami and this fear, from a competitive point of view, what should you do? The organisation that we've been set up by industry and supported by government, it was set up to do is to help you as companies figure all this out. The first thing companies need to do when they're grappling with this particular challenge is to understand what the business challenge is. And once we understand that, then we can help you understand what the technologies are that will help support that business challenge, help move that metric and that needle. And that's underpinned by 3 things that need to happen. You need to understand what the technology and what it can do, and that's what we do as an organization. You need to know what skills are that you need to have within your organization to use that technology, and that's where Michael and his team kick in, and we partner very closely with them. And then the final bit, which is often underestimated, is understanding the culture within your organization, and that can be the hardest thing to change. And again, we will help and support you as organizations as you try to go on that journey. Particular slide here, and again there was a heading on the top of it, but anyway, I'll explain it. And if you're wondering about robotic systems and things like that, and the density of robots that are existing for 10,000 employees, and which countries around the world are leading the charge, you can see it there. You know, Singapore and South Korea in particular are leading the charge worldwide. China is, in terms of total number of robots going in there, but it isn't leading the charge in the context per 10,000 employees working. It's down the list. But if you look at it at 918 per 10,000 employees in, say, Singapore, and then you start to work your way down, you notice that Ireland isn't even on the map, right? And when you come down to, say, somewhere like the UK, they're somewhere in the region, on last count, around about 70 or 80 robots for 10,000 employees, and we're about 50% of that again. So that'll tell you, in terms of automation, how far down the list we are. When it comes to digital technologies, I've marked it there on the right hand side. You see we're sitting in the middle of the pack, I'd say, in terms of this. So, you know, in terms of digitizing factories, we're not doing probably the worst, but we certainly have a long way to go. So the opportunity is for ourselves as small firms is to reach out to organizations like ourselves and to help you get your head around it. And as I said, we're here to help, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have as we go through the presentation. And I'll pass you now over to Valerie to take you through the rest of today's talk.
Thank you so much, Barry. It's wonderful to hear both yourself and Michael speak there. In terms of, and what was interesting is that I have a very similar, we're all coming to the table with a business background, so I have a background in banking, finance, and actually behavioral psychology of all things. So I'm delighted to be working with Mentors Work in relation to the program that they're running. And what I'm going to talk to you about is just to build on what both Barry and Michael have said there, which is talking about the importance of growing your own talent. You know, Michael mentioned upskilling and reskilling, and certainly from working with the clients and the participants on the Mentors Work program, it's very obvious that there's recurring themes here. And what I want to do is share with you a number of key elements here and end up with some practical pieces that you can take away as you consider this subject over the next weeks and months. In terms of the session outline, I'm going to start with the challenging marketplace, just to remind ourselves, I mean, you know, what we're working in at the moment. And then I'm going to move from then, I'm going to look at what is talent management. So this isn't something vague or woolly. This is so aligned to the commerciality of a business. But when it's not done right, you can really be missing a trick. So I really want to look at that in a little more detail. And the benefits, which have already been made aware, we've shared a little bit already, Michael has. But I want to dial that up even more. I'm going to then link it to your business strategy, because I believe at the end of the day, anything to do with manpower, the workforce, the team dynamic, growing your own, has to be linked to our strategic goals of the company. So I want to touch on that a little bit. And then, as I say, I'm going to finish off with the action plan, a little bit around, you know, how you might engage and perhaps re-engage with the team under this heading in a very tangible way. Before I jump into it though, I was reading an article just yesterday from Forbes, and they talk about the 4 main reasons that you grow your own. Really interesting. One is when you promote hard work and loyalty, the whole company sees it, right? So it's not just the individual and the talent that you have, it's what you're sending out the signal to the whole company. Second one, the people that you pick, they'll know the company better. So they first-hand experience, they can hit the ground, and they can be, you know, that they can hit the ground even quicker in relation to the growth piece. Third point they made was internal hires are likely to reach their full potential quicker. Why is that? Because they're up to speed with systems, culture, you know, even in terms of processes and so on. The fourth one they mentioned, which has already been mentioned, recruitment is very expensive at that higher level and the talent level. So the higher the role, the higher the fees, and it takes a lot of time to select. So it's very appropriate as we move and we talk about this. And again, as I mentioned, Mentors Work participants are very open to sharing their best practice, but also their challenges here and come up with solutions potentially. I mentioned I'd start with the marketplace. So let's just talk about this for a few minutes. When you look at recurring themes, it's very obvious that employee retention is top of mind for most organizations, not just small business, medium-sized business and corporates, the people I work with on a daily basis. Retention is absolutely critical at the moment. So you know that before COVID, we had to deal with high turnover. We had to deal with the gig economy. That was before COVID. But then post-COVID, we're dealing with this great resignation. So what does this happen? It's bringing a lot of disruption, and not just to you running a business and your senior teams, but also to your team itself out on the floor. Right? In large and small, people are getting a little bit anxious in relation to that. And I think that at the end of the day, what I always say is you can only control a certain element of things. You can't control a lot of things that are going on in the economy, the marketplace, Brexit, etc. But you can control as leaders how you react, you communicate, or you start to convey what your plans are around that. Because as leaders, that's our responsibility. So we don't want the unwanted turnover and the cost element of this either. And then finally, that negative effect it can have on a wide range of business and metrics, but also morale, right? It takes a long time to build up a culture. And then, you know, if certain things and the leaders have their eye on the ball, this kind of disruption can cause a lot of issues, and we might come back to that a little bit more. So let's look at retaining talent in the current environment. Why is it so critical? It's critical for a number of reasons, right? First of all, it's around your business. When your top performance leaves, their valuable company knowledge is often lost as well. That's a huge cost. You know, I'm sure you've come across the word tacit knowledge. When that's gone out of a company, it takes a long time to build that up again. I mentioned disruption earlier, and I have worked on teams in bigger organizations, and now I have a small business myself. But when somebody leaves, very interesting what happens if we don't stay close to this. First of all, people can take 6 weeks, I'm leaving the company, and it goes on too long. It goes into 2 months because actually on the one hand, you need them to stay, but on the other hand, that can actually have a detrimental effect. It can sometimes then leave the rest of the team feeling confused or disillusioned, especially if we haven't been minding what the team and what's going on. I've seen what's happened there. So people start to really rethink their own jobs and their own responsibilities. Sometimes then they have to pick up the slack because obviously, you know, there's a company that I'm working with at the moment and one of the guys have left and the rest of the guys are there, but they have to pick up the slack. And they'll do it for a certain length of time. But if that has not happened, you know, if that's not addressed, then it can lead to people thinking themselves, well, maybe I should go. The cost to replace employees, we all know about this. What do we talk about there? Reviewing CVs, you know, somebody's leaving, the disruption on the floor, getting a recruitment firm to help us, doing an interview, doing a second interview, and then the selection process, like it's very expensive. And then obviously recruiting, onboarding and training costs are also, you know, quite expensive when you think about that when somebody's coming in brand new. Now, don't get me wrong. The emphasis today is on growing your own, but there might be opportunity if it's an 80-20, where that 20% is you need new insights and you need that new skill. But I'm going to come back to that later on. But there's no question in my mind of being a team participant, leading a team in a corporate, and now leading a team in a small business. Taking an interest in the employees and making time to look at succession planning in a very serious way will pay dividends. It certainly has for me. And when I go back to the mentors work and the feedback we're getting from people who's adopted and taken on board some of the tactics and some of the best practice we share, they're also seeing it. So let's look at some stats though, right? Very interesting statistics I came across. This is from 2020, that's a US, but we can apply it more or less over here too. 57% of workers are open to looking for a new job. 60% of workers are open to looking for a new job, right? Burnout is experienced by nearly 75% of employees. Only 32 are satisfied with the role, and 2/3 of employees' departures are preventable. And that's what I'm going to come back to. Preventing people walking out the door. Don't get me wrong. You know, a great mentor of mine was a man called Tom Savage. He was a wonderful mentor, and to this day, and I miss him greatly. He used to say to me, Valerie, we don't own our employees. He said, we don't own our kids either, actually. You know, we have to let them fly the nest at some stage. But when he said that to me, I just thought sometimes we can be a bit precious about it, like they're leaving. You know, our job sometimes is to support, grow, mentor, and help them be at their best. So if they do leave, they leave on a high and they say thank you, and you know what's going to happen? They can sometimes come back in the door a year later because they know they need to kind of get broader experience. But if the departure can be preventable, what I'm talking about is departures where people are not feeling valued, they're demotivated, nobody's taking an interest in them. That's all stuff that you don't need a PhD to look at. And I am going to talk about the tactics now in a second. Finally, a few more stats. 88% of highly engaged employees say that they will be in their current organization in a year's time. That's engaged employees. Doesn't take a lot to engage employees, but it does take focus from the leader. 49% of exiting employees felt that they weren't, sorry, 49% of exiting employees said that they felt valued by their leaders, only 49. So what happened to 51? Employees that are given loads of opportunity to grow, develop, and flexibility are 4 times likely to become a retention risk. And then only 48% of exiting employees said that when they gave feedback, leaders not only listened, but they did something about it. Very interesting. What are we learning? Why do we look at research? Research to me, why do I read articles? Why do I look at research? Research is showing me what insights. And if I'm running my business over the next 12 to 18 months, my goodness, I'm going to take 1 or 2 of these, not 22, and think, how can I apply this back to my job? So let's pause for a second and look at the reasons why we should be encouraging people to stay. Just a short piece here from Simon Sinek. I'm sure many of you have heard of him. He's an American author, he's a speaker. He talks about a few key things. Feeling loyal to the company. If there's a loyalty thing, the loyalty connection, they turn down job offers. If they're seen and heard, back to that feedback. He talks about hard skills, but human skills, not soft skills. They're intricately, they're so important. It's like IQ and EQ, feeling that they're growing. You know, growing, mastery, learning is a massive motivator. And finally, that if we do it right, we're encouraging the next layer down to coach the next layer down. So it's not all falling on your shoulders as you support the growth of your team. Just a short clip on this. I'll just press it now. I hope you can hear it.
We don't have to like our jobs every day, but we do get to love our jobs every day. So you don't like your children every day, but you love your children every day. So having a hard day, you know, that's fun. But the question is what do we fall in love with? And at the end of the day, the reason that we stay or leave a job is because of how we feel about that job. You know, I think we misunderstand and we think people just leave for money. If they just leave for money, then they never really had strong feelings of the company in the first place, right? Because when people feel loyal to the company, they turn down jobs that offer them more money. Or if it's so tempting and the numbers are so high, then they go to their company and say, listen, I was offered this job. It's very tempting, there's a lot of pressure, but I don't want to leave. Is there anything you can do to help me stay, right? So, and there's the point is they're open about it. And what makes people want to have that conversation, like I said, is that they're seen and heard. The best companies have all kinds of programs inside the company to help the person grow as an individual. Now, we talked about, you know, listening skills and these kinds of things. These are valuable for the work that we do, but it turns out that those skills also help us as parents, and they help us as spouses or as boyfriends and as girlfriends. These are valuable skills in life, you know? And I think that we forget that. We talk about hard skills and soft skills as if those things are opposite. I hate the term soft skills. Hard skills and human skills. And the more that we invest in human skills, in addition to the hard skills that we're teaching, the more people feel like they're growing as individuals. I'm a better version of myself now than I was when I started this company, because the company is actually helping me on in personal growth. WD-40, which is a company that I admire their culture, the lubricant company, they train their managers to be coaches. So literally, like executive coaching training, that kind of thing. But they train their own people to have that skill set so that they're equipped to help their people who have challenges. And especially with younger generation. You know, the younger generation is asking companies to provide everything. You know, we want to have our sense of belonging, our sense of community, our sense of personal growth, our sense of purpose to come from work. It didn't used to be like that 40 years ago. And so there's a huge pressure on companies. And so I think what entices people into the company and into the industry is not just come and do cybersecurity. You know, there's a percentage of people who are de facto interested in that, but rather tell them the kind of experience they're going to have, tell them what they get from the company, and you'll find it remarkable how many people will all of a sudden be interested in the category of the company because of what they get holistically, not just what they get from the product. We don't have to like our...
I think it's really interesting what he talks about there, about the holistic approach. I mean, when I joined the bank many years ago, right, we had this kind of, psychological contract, but now, as he says, there are things, the millennials are looking for something different. The different generations are looking for a little bit more holistic kind of offering from us. And in some ways, you think, oh my goodness, that's more pressure, but it shouldn't be either, because there's a couple of key things that they want from us. But having a closer connection with the business, and making them feel valued and having a sense of purpose. And we're going to come to that in a second. What happens is they probably stay a little longer. And the other thing that we have to recognize as small business and medium-sized businesses is that actually they talk to each other, right? They go home to the apartments and saying, guess what we did today? Guess what we did today? So that piece, I wouldn't underestimate that either, because they will move, but equally it's not all about the money. Right, now don't get me wrong, money is important, but especially at different stages in our lives. But it's fascinating how about intrinsic motivation, when you look at this, why people stay a little longer. I'm going to talk about talent management for a second, and then look at how the benefits of growing, what we've just talked about. Different definitions of talent management, but I really like this. It actually boils down to 6 key things. It's a systematic 1, attraction, 2, identification, 3, development, 4 is engagement, 5 is retention, and 6 is deployment of those individuals who are particularly valuable to you. Now, don't get me wrong, I've worked on teams where the stars were really treated like stars and the rest of us were not even seen as potential stars. Right? Don't find yourself like that. But if you're able to do both, potentially look at the rest of you, the stars that are obvious, but the others that you're helping to grow and develop to become stars. I'm going to share with you some ideas on that. So don't be just at the stars and the rest of us are left out there. That's not what we're talking about here. So, based on working with Mentors Work, it's just not good enough to know a definition. You have to do something about it, right? So how would you create a talent management strategy? It's all about your workforce planning. So this is standing right back as the senior leader or the CEO, or maybe you'll work with somebody on your team, one of your leaders. Again, I always bring this broader than just yourself. And what you do with the planning is you're looking at the workflow, looking at the current demands, and you're looking at future demands. You're looking at the demographic that's on your floor, or in your company, but then also looking at potential skills that you might look at. Looking at the shortages as well, in terms of the surplus that might be, the shortages that might be there, or surpluses, depending on what the market is looking for. But what key is identifying who you have on the team and devising a workforce plan. This does not have to be heavy lifting, right? It's not vague and woolly. It's so aligned back to the commerciality of your business. A couple of key things, again, based on feedback I got through Mentors Work, some of the participants in particular, they said they really agreed, CIPD did this piece here, that looking at recruitment in a very focused way and looking at that talent acquisition is key. Succession planning, again, looking at the potential across the floor. Leadership development, supporting the emerging leaders on your team and not just ignoring it, right? Looking at career management. Everybody's entitled to have that trajectory of growth and be excited around that. But if we don't, and it's left hanging there or withering on the vine, or there's nothing done around it, and then performance management is another one. And I do think that very, very strongly about this. It doesn't have to be the, oh my goodness, the big performance review, but managing performance, rewarding people, taking an interest in them again, and then finally leading to employee retention. So there's quite a number there. Some might resonate with you more than others, but the plan, if you don't have a plan, somebody again said to me years ago, if you have a destination to get there, it's easier to get there if you've got a map. So maybe one of the key takeaways from today is to start looking at this and devising a map what's really relevant. The benefits, some of them are very obvious here. Employer reputation. Why would you not want to have that reputation based on the young ones talking the apartments? That's what I often think of my own team here. Just saying, why wouldn't you want to stand out? I really, again, belief and confidence is really strong, especially as we head into the next challenge that's going to hit us in small and large businesses, right? This uncertainty in the market, again, we can't control it, but as leaders, my goodness, we need to understand that we have to control ourselves, how we engage, communicate, and influence, right? But that belief and confidence is great. Why? Because it brings hope. And it gives a sense that there's actually a career here for me, even though Mary's leaving. And actually sometimes Mary and John leave because they wanted to live down the west of Ireland, or they want to go to England, or they want a job change. That's okay. You know, and we obviously, that exit, it has to be very professional. But also if I'm staying and there's a great culture of support, then I know there's a trajectory of growth and I'm going to stay a bit longer. So I mentioned culture there. Developing and engaging employees, you know, building that culture, you know, creating a buzz. I walk into companies and I can see if there's what kind of culture the minute you walk in the door. Those that is a bit of a buzz on the floor, there's a bit of, you know, chatting, it's a bit collaboration is going on live in front of me. They have an innovation corner, or they're just talking and engaging, and it's open plan, etc., etc. So that kind of, there are definitely parts to the fit out that can also support you there too. Cost reduction and disruption I've mentioned already. And then opportunities to grow as a company, real opportunity. I just think as you move forward to look at this as an opportunity for your business to grow, and to get some people involved on the company too. I do remember though years ago in terms of disruption that there was a leader that worked, that I reported into. They took no interest in what was going on, only just reporting up the line. They took no really interest in any of us, only themselves, right? I'm not saying that most people come to work to do a good job. Different people have different approaches here. But then one person left, and then they were left too long before they left, telling us how brilliant this new company was and how brilliant all the package was. Then when they left, they kept coming back for the dues and telling us how fantastic it was. Meanwhile, our leader still didn't take much heed to us. And then we started questioning, Jeannie Mac, maybe we should jump as well. Right. So when I was talking about preventing this, there's definitely tactics that you can do. So linked to your strategy, right? Let's look at strategic goals. You know, if you start with the end in mind and you think out the next 12, 18 months, years ago, you do a strategic plan for 5 years. Those days are well and truly gone. We all know that. But if you're looking at the strategic direction of the company and you look and you see, well, what's your ambition as a leader? It's important that you map that out for yourself and your senior team, perhaps. But equally then you can get the team involved in finessing that and putting even smaller shapes on bits and pieces to it. Because the more involved people feel in the contribution they're giving towards the direction, it aligns them back to that sense of purpose and what Simon said, that sense of loyalty, right? Also, growing your own, getting that input. A lot of your staff that are there a while are very close to the customer. So they're able to kind of support you in relation to what the trajectory of growth financially that might be, but also managing the cash flow. Energizing the team. My goodness, have you ever worked with a team that gives you energy or one that saps it out of you, right? You know, energy management is very key and very important as we go forward. And then, you know, the team dynamic. You know, sometimes it's self-fulfilling then, yeah, because you can see it happening on the floor, because but you do have to introduce a number of 1 or 2 little initiatives to support to make sure this happens, or else it's just a talking shop. And again, another great coach of mine said to me years ago, he said, you know what, we don't own our employees, and I mentioned that earlier, but he said, if you look after them, they might stay a little longer, and if you've happier staff, what happens? They have stronger engagement with clients. I don't think you can fake that engagement. You come across people that you're a supplier that really wants you to really support you or not. So your staff are engaging with the clients more. What happens? They buy more from you, and do you know what else? They talk about you to other potential clients, and they become ambassadors. So it's very important to remember that. So how might you do this? You know, as the team develops further, get them closer to the business. You know, as I mentioned, you know, get them involved in the strategic plan, but it might be an element of the plan. It might be around how we're going to grow a market segment, or it might be how we're going to go into a new market, or it might be how we're going to consolidate or reduce costs. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's just that you're getting them involved. As I mentioned already, that they can spot things that perhaps you can't. But finally, kind of, you know, following through and being consistent and following your lead is really, that people will look to you, that if you're full of enthusiasm and you've loads of ideas and then nothing happens, then it can be really frustrating. So just my final section then, just to finish off, let's look at the plan of action and how you might engage or re-engage. Minimizing the challenge, you know, developing an employee retention and management, talent management strategy is a great step forward, right? First step. So if you want to grow your own, ask your own, right? Do the research. Ask people if they're leaving, why they're leaving. What's the root cause, if you can? And, you know, rather than just saying, oh, You know, because again, if you just really prefer your honesty here, what as a leader could have done better, or what could the team have done better? You know, and it's amazing when you some people just do the exit, or could do the exit, or we've a view that well, they're out the door anyway, and you're, you know, good riddance. But actually, spend a bit of time actually going to slightly, you know, deeper on the questions and just say, you're really helping me. We hate to see you go. Really love to know. Give me something really that I could think about. Very interesting what emerges then. Right, so exactly as it says there, understanding what the root causes are, going deeper. Why? Because your SME or your business, you know, it wants to be even more sharper, more focused, more relevant as you go forward, and that feedback can be invaluable. Right, once you hear the feedback, then work to address that. So again, I'm not a saint. There are times on teams when I got feedback, I said, God, that's amazing. Oh my goodness, I need to do it. And you know what happens? I go back to the desk and there's 25 other things there, and I get mixed up between what's urgent. And that's important. And sometimes the important gets left behind because the urgent takes priority. And I'm not even thinking about it, but the important is around growing my team, taking an interest, having a coffee, asking them what motivates them, right? Developing relationships with clients. So it's really interesting. So being proactive and how you do that, and then combine the retention and growth strategy. Again, that comes up a lot on mentors work, that combining the retention and growing. So retaining what you already have, growing the people that you have, but also growing that pool, and potentially getting one maybe new person in that is coming from that has that skill that you may not have. What's the result? It's a culture that attracts and retains top talent. So there's 5 kind of tips here that I'd like you to take, 5 kind of takeaways. One is communication. So our role as the chief executives, as the senior leaders, is to communicate. It's the lifeblood of any team. Number 2, take an interest in employees. This is not just, oh, how are you doing? And you're looking over their shoulder. Or hello, how's it going? How was your weekend? And you're looking at your watch. Yeah? Taking time, taking interest. This does not have to take a huge amount of time, but it has to take focus. 3rd, performance management. Everybody's entitled to have a job spec and have a sense at the end of the year, somebody telling them how they've done. I am still shocked when I go into businesses, large, small corporates or whatever, that people still don't do performance reviews, or they don't do that kind of, don't get me wrong, I know for years we used to have them and come across them that were heavy lifting. This can be 1 page, right? And 4th is to look at the area of innovation. I think this is a game changer. I really do. If there's nothing else from today you take forward in terms of, well, 1 is the plan, right? But 2nd is look at innovation as a way to engage the team and get them even interested and to take action. So just to go down through this very briefly. Robin Sharma is a great guru, a guy that I go back to again and again, and he's a great quote. I'd love to have owned this quote myself, right? And maybe I wrote this down several times and I have it up on the wall. The more informed you are, the better decisions you make. The better decisions you make, the better results you get. So I'll say it again. The more informed you are, the better decisions you make. The better decisions you make, the better results you get. If you understand, like as a leader, we need to be more informed. Why? Because we need to communicate with confidence where the business is going. If we communicate ourselves, or even ourselves, we're more informed, what happens? We make a better decision and we get a better result. So in terms of comms, sharing where you're going, being authentic as a leader, asking for their views, you know, giving them insights as to the challenges of the business face. They're more informed, they'll make a better decision. And with your guidance around the better decision, they'll get a better result. And that's self-fulfilling then, because they'll feel that they're actually contributing, they'll feel happier and they'll feel energized. When they're not communicated to, they're left in the dark. It's kind of the water cooler effect. You know, that negativity can be very infectious. And all of a sudden, I think I read a piece of research where it said if you even get a text coming in on the phone, our brain can be disconnected for nearly 30 minutes by even seeing something flashing up on the screen. So you can just imagine the water cooler. That means that the employees are not engaged with supporting the business growth and engaging with your customers. So certainly communication. So it might be around this, that you're, you know, developing what that regular comms with them, good news, bad news. And also on this, that you're kind of, you know, I also think in terms of this, a mini audit perhaps of scales would be very useful too. I've certainly done it on the team. And then when you're looking at your workforce planning, the audit overlays on top of that, and you will see the gaps. And so gaps for career planning, but also gaps of if you really do need to look outside, which I would definitely be more of a focus of growing your own. I mentioned motivation, right? Again, more informed, better decision, better results. Certainly when somebody put this in front of me over 10 years ago, it was a light bulb moment. When you look at Hertzberg theory, right, I'm not going to go deep dive, there's the extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, right? That's two-factor theory, right? But he talks about hygiene factors, right? But then he talks about motivating factors. Extrinsic is typically when somebody does something to get a reward, like a badge, or the salary increase or the title or whatever. Don't get me wrong, they're important. But what he talks about is, as leaders, if we tap into intrinsic motivation, you think about leaders that inspired you. Mostly when I've asked that to thousands of people at this stage, and when I ask at our mentors work, what happens is they come back with somebody who's make them feel valued, that's empower them to do their job by supporting their growth, development, and training. Also learning, mastery, it's massively an intrinsic motivator. They don't mention money, they don't mention status, they mention these things because actually, and again, the younger workforce, they want to learn, they're eager for that, and they want somebody to take an interest in them. Very interesting. You don't need to have a PhD in this to understand, actually, in order to take an interest, what happens. Leaders need to not manage their time, but manage their focus back into engaging properly with the team. Mentioned performance management, but just on this one here, it's just, make it a bit more tangible. You need to be consistent. I mentioned everybody's entitled to know where they're going, but that should be measured, and also that their pathway to success is there's recognition at various different points. But it also this performance management helps you identify potential to grow. So it's a meaningful two-way discussion that you can have along the way. And there's 5 main objectives, not good to go down through all of these now, but just remind yourself of these objectives, that clarity. I mean, again, clarity breeds mastery, but it's consistency that's a driver of change. And if we're not consistent around following through here for employees, we're missing a trick when we're trying to grow our own. Slide, and I can share these slides afterwards, but very interesting when Gallup looked at this, 9 key performance indicators showed successful outcomes when the employee was engaged. You think of turnover there, what's it there? 65% it went down, the turnover in the team, based on the leader taking an interest in engaging with them correctly. Profitability went up 22%. I mean, the stats speak for themselves. I mentioned innovation, and I want to finish on this because I just think it's important to think. I said it's a game changer. Get the team involved. So as you plan over the next 12, 18 months, it could be an opportunity to take a segment or something that you want to really explore further. Really what you're doing is you're setting the scene and being authentic, you're including them, and if you're including and they come up with some new ideas and they're involved in that, they're much more likely to follow through and implement these ideas because you've asked them day one. Right? So what I'm suggesting here is you select an issue or an opportunity and you get a small little group together, and you can do it twice, 3 times in the year, because sometimes people don't want to feel that they're left out, but you also have to have a defined timeline on this, because otherwise it could just run out of road. So I think 4 to 6 weeks is a good idea. So I call it innovation think tanks. So, and if anybody wants any more, and this is just like you can contact through Mentors Work, but certainly Mentors Work participants have used it. And really what it does, it gives you that window of opportunity where you're tapping into their curiosity. You're getting some of the young ones, certainly for me, was to look at technology, right? And show me where I'm going wrong. But they also then, they enjoyed the extra curricular. They did some research themselves. They come back with 3 options. So the midpoint is halfway through to share. That's very important. So they're not going off down cul-de-sacs. And you might say of the 3, there's only 1 that you think, yeah, we've tried it before, but go with the other 2, And at the very end then, that they bring forward and they present back what they found and the next steps. Really interesting. The process is just as important as the output. And it's certainly, if it's appropriate at the moment to look at that over the next, say, 6 months for your team, and to run one maybe after Christmas, really believe that you get it back in droves in terms of what you might see, but also what you might hear and what you're doing in terms of the culture. So finally, taking action. What's the opportunity here? WTOH, as a small business, we need to ask ourselves, small or large business. So a recap, use the opportunity to grow your existing talent. This is an opportunity that's given to you. You're lucky enough to have great people perhaps on your team. So if you've got the real talented ones, you really want to look after those. So recognizing that you have to devise a plan around that, but don't discard the rest as having no potential, right? We need to spend time looking at, maybe it's the audit you want to do. You're looking at the talent you have and the experience, but also there might be mini mentors that you might want to do across the floor depending on the size of the business. I've mentioned the audit already. And then look who is supporting your team leaders and look at the succession. I remember years ago, a leader giving me a chance, right? And he said to me, I'm pulling the stone off you, Valerie, and the little flower is emerging. And I was just thinking, Jeannie Mackers, I don't know about that, but I was left under a stone because the previous leader hadn't seen, and I was fine. I was too young to even notice this, but he gave me an opportunity to work on the business banking side of things. And my goodness, I just took to it like a duck to water. So sometimes you can look out for people who are obvious or not obvious. And the think tank actually is an opportunity to throw a few people into the mix. Really watch, very interesting what you observe, who's really stepping up and who isn't. Right, who you stars you thought would be really leading the charge and they're not. Really interesting. Identify the elements of your plan and who can support whom. Recognizing as well that if it's a very small business you have, there are people around you on this call that are here to help. Mentors Work is a brilliant program to go on as well. But equally, I've used my accountant in the past, I've used my technology guys in the past when I'm looking at innovation for my own company. So there are people around you. Follow the 5 steps that I've mentioned in relation to the performance management system. Stay close to this. And as the CEO or to the leader of the team, you know, it's important that you actually have the plan. It stays live. It's not just sitting on the shelf. And it's just, you know, that it's gathering dust, and that you're really using this as an opportunity to lead differently and position your company differently, and reinforcing that when you go and promote people that are on your floor or in your team and in your company, that the ripple effect of positivity it can give, and that opportunity and that optimism it can bring for the rest of the team, knowing that actually you're taking them seriously, is so heartening. And definitely the research I've seen here coming through a Mentors Work has reiterated that. So being consistent as a leader is really key. Going to finish for yourselves. I'm going to say share and chat, but I'm not going to share and chat. Just in terms of yourselves before we finish, and I'm going to hand back over to the panel. What needs to change for you and your SME in terms of growing your own? So if there's 2 things you're taking from today's webinar, what are they? No such thing as they used to say free lunch, and we're not giving you free lunch with this, but if there's 2 things, not 22 from today, and while you're writing that down, it might be based on what Michael and Barry have already shared, reconnecting there. It might be joining Mentors Work, really recommend that, highly recommend that, hugely successful. It might be that you want to kind of go back over these slides and actually start their plan. It might be to do a mini audit on the team. It might just, if there's 2 things. And then my final thing is, again, the psychology. If you take action within the next 24 hours, then you're much more likely to be consistent with what you do afterwards. So I'd like to thank everybody for the opportunity, first of all, to the SFA and Mentors Work for this opportunity to participate today. Really enjoyed talking about a subject that's very close to my heart, and I'm delighted to have shared some of the best practices and some tips there, some practical stuff about helping you in terms of your next steps. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Valerie, Michael, and Barry. Now I'll just come in here and just talk about Mentors Work. As I said, Valerie is one of our trainers on Mentors Work, and Mentors Work is a free upskilling program available through the SFA. And when you apply to go on to Mentors Work, you get one-to-one bespoke mentoring. You get interactive workshops and masterclasses, and this is all done through an in-depth online competency assessment. So that means that you log on, you go through this assessment, and what you get back is the training and tools that you need to make improvements to your business. So that's what you've identified, and this is what the training options come back through the test. And then at the very end of Mentors Work, you get that takeaway. And like Valerie said, everyone needs a little bit of homework at the end of stuff, keep you on the toes. And that's a 6-month business improvement plan. And for those mentees who've come through the program, all of them say, it's the mentoring, it's the bespoke part element of it, but then it's the improvement plan then at the next 6 months to really work on. So look, if you're not applied yet, you're not started on your Mentors Work journey, you can apply now at mentorswork.ie, or if you've actually finished and completed the program, you actually can go back and rejoin it. There is no limit to that. Now, I'd like to just open the Q&A session. So I'd ask those participants on the line to just pop your Q&A questions into the chat function. But before we start, I will actually just go out to Barry Barry, I was just looking up some stats there while you were speaking. Irish manufacturing employs 260,000 people, and it's actually responsible for 12% of the total employment. So that's employing a lot of people, and I know that it's a big exporter for the Irish economy, and it's a big sector that we want to grow in the future, be that in food, be that in med tech, or be that in the chemical sector, and even exporting out into construction as well, I believe, is an area that we want to look at. So I suppose, Barry, we want people to join. We want people to join the sector. We want those business owners in the sector to upskill and to improve. And I was just wondering, could you just maybe go through what is the success of becoming more digital and becoming more upskilled for the manufacturers that are online right now?
What is the success, or what do you need to do to continue to be successful, I suppose, is the question. I think,
yeah.
And I think Irish manufacturing has done very well over the last number of years. We punch way above our weight. We've got phenomenal stories here in this country, and we don't even realise it. We've companies like if I think just to mention one, say a company like Mergon or Decotech down in the Midlands, for instance, and they're maybe companies a lot of people wouldn't know about, but they're tier 1 suppliers into the automotive market, so supplying into the likes of Tesla and BMW, Porsche. They supply, you know, in the case of Decotech, the chrome finishing around the windows that you'd see, or the plastics inside the Tesla that you might have there, be it, you know, the air vents and the water bottles and things like that. They're very important parts of the automotive industry, right? And we don't even know it. They're huge success stories here based in Ireland. And if we are to maintain that kind of leadership where we are, you know, we may not be making the full car, but we're making so much of the component parts of it. Some of the electronics as well. We're making some of the camera vision systems for cars we're making here in this country as well. If we're to maintain that leadership, and not lose it to these developing regions, and we really are going to have to digitize. And the whole supply chain, and God, do we know that with COVID, it was very much challenged, and the old ways of doing business were being challenged. Digital technologies are the way forward, and as a small business, you have to get in front of this. You have to understand, you have to figure out how you're going to fit into that value chain or that supply chain in a digital way. And so if you haven't been on that journey yet, you really need to get in front of it. And the way I frame this to companies, it reminds me of when I was 17 years of age. I used to do a lot of cross-country running, and I remember it was the Leinster Championship, and I was coming around the corner in Phoenix Park in Dublin, and I was about 200 yards ahead of everyone else when I checked over my shoulder coming around that bend, and I kind of thought, happy days, I can coast across the line. And within seconds before I hit the line, 5 other lads passed me out, and I came sixth. I didn't get a medal, and I was very disappointed in that particular. In fact, I came seventh. There were 6 medals. I came seventh, and I was very disappointed. And this reminds me very much what's going on with the digital journey. When I think of that story, you know, companies are being told, look, there's this coming behind you. You know, there's a digital transformation. Those countries who are behind are trying to catch up. You need to get in front of it. On that day, people were shouting at me. And I would kind of say organizations like, you know, ourselves or Michael's organization are shouting and saying, companies, you need to look at it. Technology is transforming very fast. I'll give you an example. In the dental industry, and those who supply dental implants, it took 18 months for 90% of the global market to shift from traditional methods of making it to 3D printing. So if you were in that game and you weren't looking at 3D printing, you're going to be left behind. So it's kind of like a call to arms, I'd say, to companies. If you want to stay successful, you need to get in front of these technologies and understand what it can do for you as a business.
Brilliant. I'll go to Michael now. Michael, Valerie spoke about the importance of employees feeling like they're growing. And I suppose for the best way to make an employee feel like they're growing is to invest in them and invest them in through upskilling. And I was just wondering, you know, when a company comes to AMTCE and they say, you know, we've got these staff, we want to adopt digitally, but we also want to upskill. So how does your organization kind of meet that and support manufacturers in that area?
Well, first of all, we have a dedicated employment engagement team. So they are, I suppose, our front of house, and they engage with employers across the country on a day-to-day basis. They basically we'll have a discussion about your training needs. Do we have an existing course offering that meets those needs? If we don't have something on our books, we can then go out and find a training provider that can deliver that program or that course for that company, and that can be and then we'll also help them through the paperwork, because obviously it's state funding involved and so forth, so it's not quite a free lunch, but there's a little bit of paperwork involved. And again, we support the employers through that process, and that can be, I suppose, initially a very tactical type of engagement, so meeting that immediate response. But then we also like to engage with employers on a more strategic basis, as here's our offering. How does that then reflect into your plans to develop your workforce over the next 12 or 18 months and so forth? So as I say, we like to engage tactically. We also like to engage strategically. Another example of that then also is that we will engage in companies, particularly where companies are looking for, where they may be fighting for an investment to bring a new product line in or expand the business and so forth. And what we're now finding is that we become part of that value conversation, because they can go back then to headquarters. Oh, there's this organization that can help us to bring, train up the existing workforce, or if we have to increase our workforce, they can be supported in upskilling those or those new employees as well. So we're now, I suppose, becoming part of that overall value proposition to win new business as well for companies, particularly companies who are have a multinational dimension to them as well.
Brilliant. Valerie, I'll go to you now, just talking about the cost of replacement. It's the 15th of November now. There's probably lots of people on the call now, employees coming into their office saying, I'm going to finish up in a month's time. Actually, I'll give you an extra 2 weeks. I'll go to Christmas. And that leaves you coming back after the new year with an employee down, because it's going to be hard to recruit in the next couple of weeks. Just wondering, 3 things that you would advise someone on the call now who's getting that letter in of resignation from a staff member. How can they maybe work to try and maintain that person in the business?
Well, first of all, when somebody's made up their mind and they're handing in a letter of resignation, the chances are, the research shows, they've made up their mind 6 weeks before they even hand the letter in. It's very difficult to try and get somebody to stay when they've said they've stayed. Even though it happened to me, I was leaving years ago a job, and actually the boss, he was a great guy. He offered me a new opportunity, but I didn't offer the letter in order to get a counter offer, if that makes sense. Sometimes people do that. So it's a tricky one. So I think if there's an opportunity to have a real honest discussion, and if the person's halfway out the door and you really know, the best thing you can do is let them go. I know it sounds counterintuitive at times, but what can happen is they could stay, kind of wanted to go because the new things sounded shinier, and then they're staying, and then the rest of the team are still, they know there's a wobble. So mostly, my advice would be to let them go, but actually have a very good exit interview. Getting behind the reasons, right? So it's saying, oh, do you know what? I just like to develop my skills. I really believe you have an opportunity to ask if there's 2 things I could do differently. When you ask that question, people would say, well, I can actually identify 2 things, and they're asking for the feedback. So rather than just saying feedback and taking them. So if there's 2 things I could have done differently in relation to you, your support, the team, what are they? Sometimes you'll hear about a team, something that you could have done, but secondly, around the person. So that's very valuable to take that forward. And the 3rd thing I would do is I wouldn't, I know it's easy to say not panic. Our jobs as leaders to create a bit of calmness. We recognize that we don't own the employees. Things come and go. There's highs and lows of every business, right? But what we don't want is to have the sense of panic out on the floor. And next thing, everybody knows that there's big panic, and all of a sudden then it's back to that water cooler. You want to kind of treat the exit very professionally and calm the waters for the rest of the people. If you're hearing an insight of 1 or 2 things, then say it before Christmas. Actually, as we go forward, I think we're going to look at this a little bit more seriously. Are we going to make sure that X, Y, and Z happens? Have a plan around it. So to recap, 1 is to kind of, if they're going, they're out the door anyway, probably is best to let them go, but also welcome them back. Say that you'll always be welcome back if they genuinely are welcome back. Second of all, get to the root cause. And thirdly, keep a sense of calmness, but also plan a trajectory around what you're going to do differently. And that's my advice.
Brilliant. Valerie, I'll come back to you again. You are a trainer on the Mentors Work Programme. And I suppose just in a few words, what do you think is the best thing about the Mentors Work Programme? What can small businesses get out of it?
Well, first of all, I think, honest to God, because I've been involved in it now and I got to meet some of the other trainers, the pillar champions, it's very focused and it's very much aligned to the business needs. So in terms of even doing the diagnosis piece, when they're doing kind of the questionnaires as they go in and they kind of look at their competencies, it's very then designed around a bespoke offering. So it's not something that you're just sent on a program. It's very bespoke, and I think that's and feedback I've got, it's been so powerful for businesses because it zones in on areas like Barry mentioned, might be the digital that's needed, or it might be the people side that, you know, so it is very focused. Second of all is that there's a variety then of a menu of options of different masterclasses and workshops that people can go to, and they're an hour. So it's not, some of them are 2 hours, grand, but some of them are an hour. So if you can get that hour in, it's a shot in the arm of the subject that really gets them back on track, or gives them that, provokes thought, or confirms something that they're, so those workshops are very powerful. And the third thing is that it goes on for a series of months. They develop relationships, networks, connections in the room. And you know, I think that that's so powerful, and actually the SFA are very good at doing that as well. So creating connections where people can cross-pollinate, and that's always a really good idea. So the connections are to kind of with seasoned people who have the same pains as you, so you're not alone. But second of all, an opportunity to do business potentially as well through the Mentors Work program. So I cannot endorse it enough.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm conscious of time, so I'll draw this to a close, but just to remind you that obviously you can go on to mentorswork.ie to get more information. So look, just to wrap it up, I'd really like to thank Valerie, Barry and Michael for joining us today and for their presentations. I'd like to thank Margaret and Luke, who is our webinar team. I'd like to thank you, the participants who came on and supported this recording. And just to remind you again that this is recorded, and we will be circulating it to you along with all of the slides. So finally, thank you for joining us this morning, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.